The morning sun washed over Victoria Island, painting the tall buildings in a golden hue. At the heart of the city stood Nova Tech Group, one of the most prestigious companies in the country. Inside its marble lobby, staff moved quickly, suits pressed, heels clicking, perfumes mixing with the faint scent of coffee and polish. A new cleaner arrived quietly that morning. He was tall and lean, with dark brown skin that glistened faintly under the soft light. His hair was neatly trimmed, his uniform a little too big for his frame. He carried a mop and a bucket, moving with calm precision that seemed unusual for his job. He bent to clean the floor, his movements slow and steady, eyes sharp beneath his humble posture. When he looked up, the reflection on the marble caught his face, the face of a man who had seen the world and returned with secrets. Outside, a convoy of black SUVs stopped in front of the building. The air changed instantly. The company's managing director, Vanessa, stepped out first. Her caramel-brown skin glowed beneath the morning sun, her red gown hugging her tall frame with elegance and pride. Her golden earrings sparkled as she walked in, and every staff member greeted her with nervous smiles. Her eyes fell on the cleaner, crouched near the lobby center. She frowned slightly at the sight of him, wiping a corner of the glass door. "You missed a spot," she said coldly, her tone sharp but calm. "Do it properly. I don't want any dirt around here before my investors arrive." The cleaner looked up briefly, his brown eyes steady. "Yes, Ma. I'll fix it right away." Something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't fear. It was calm confidence. She studied him for a second, then turned away with a flick of her wrist. As she disappeared into the elevator, the cleaner continued his work silently, his thoughts deep and heavy. 10 years ago, he had left this very city to chase dreams abroad. He built empires, made millions, and lost the woman he once loved, the same woman who now walked these halls with pride, unaware of who he had become. He rinsed the mop slowly, watching the water swirl with dust and reflection. The building, the people, even the air, all of it felt familiar, yet strange. 10 years away had changed everything. But today, he was not here as the billionaire everyone once envied. He was here as a stranger, a cleaner. And this time, he wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking for truth. The next morning came with the hum of traffic and the rhythm of a city that never rested. Inside Nova Tech Group, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Investors from Dubai and London were expected to visit, and every department raced to impress. The cleaner moved quietly through the hallways, carrying his mop and bucket like a shadow. He had already memorized every corner of the building, the executive floors, the boardroom, the private elevator Vanessa used, and even the hidden passage that led to the rooftop garden where she often took her lunch. He had returned not only to test hearts, but also to see what his empire had become in his absence. Novatech was his brainchild, his creation. 10 years ago, before traveling abroad, he had entrusted it to his fiancée, Vanessa, believing in her honesty and love. Now, as he watched her command the staff with confidence and cold precision, he wondered how much of that woman he once knew still existed. By noon, the office was in full motion. Vanessa walked through the corridors with a group of foreign investors, her smile bright, her tone filled with practiced warmth. Her navy blue suit fit perfectly, her hair tied in an elegant bun. Every word she spoke was sharp, deliberate, and professional. Yet behind that perfection, her eyes carried something restless, ambition perhaps, or guilt. The cleaner swept silently in the corner near the glass doors, watching. She barely noticed him. He overheard fragments of conversation. The investors praised her leadership. They mentioned profits, projects, and expansion. She responded smoothly, taking all the credit for strategies he himself had designed years ago. He continued cleaning, but every sentence cut deeper. Novatech became a global name because of my persistence, she said proudly. We've grown from a small engineering firm to an international success story. The cleaner's hand paused on the mop handle. He remembered the nights they had spent planning this dream together. He remembered her promise to never let greed or pride come between them. But now, watching her bask in admiration, she hadn't fully earned his chest tightened. Still, he said nothing. He finished cleaning and quietly moved toward the staff lounge. There, a few employees chatted while eating lunch. Two junior engineers whispered about Vanessa's rise. "She's tough," one said, "but they say she changed after the founder disappeared abroad. Some say she sold part of the company to foreigners." The cleaner pretended not to hear, dipping his mop into the bucket. But inside, his mind was racing. If she truly sold part of the company, it meant betrayal, not only of him, but of everything they once stood for. Later that afternoon, Vanessa walked past again, her high heels clicking across the marble floor. She almost bumped into the cleaner, who quickly stepped aside. For a moment, their eyes met again. There was something strangely familiar in his gaze, something she couldn't name. "Be careful," she said sharply. "You almost spilled that water on me." He bowed his head slightly. "I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to." She brushed past him, but thought lingered in her mind. There was something about this cleaner, his calm, his tone, his posture. He didn't move like a desperate man. He carried himself like someone who didn't belong to the floor he was standing on. But she quickly dismissed it. To her, he was just another worker, one among many. As evening fell, the cleaner finished his shift and walked outside. The sunset cast orange light on the glass building, and the reflection of his own face stared back at him. The face of a man testing the truth. He whispered quietly to himself, "Time changes everything, but hearts, they reveal who we truly are." The wind picked up gently as he turned toward the street. Somewhere above him, behind tinted glass, Vanessa watched from her office window, her eyes narrowing slightly. For the first time in 10 years, something about the stranger unsettled her. The next day, the city of Lagos awoke to restless skies and a humid breeze that carried the scent of rain. Inside Novateca's headquarters, everything looked perfect. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine, glass walls gleaming, the air filled with the faint buzz of computers and ambition. But beneath that perfect surface, something was breaking. The cleaner entered through the service door as usual, dressed in his plain gray uniform. His eyes, sharp and steady, swept across the lobby. Everyone moved quickly, assistants carrying documents, engineers hurrying with reports, and secretaries whispering in corners about rumors only half true. He made his way upstairs, pushing his cleaning cart. The elevator doors opened, revealing Vanessa in a crisp white blouse and pencil skirt, surrounded by her assistants. Her aura commanded respect, cold, confident, and unreachable. The cleaner stepped aside as she passed, but this time her eyes lingered on him for a second longer than before. It wasn't recognition, not yet, but a strange curiosity that brushed her thoughts like a whisper she couldn't ignore. "Who hired that new cleaner?" she asked one of her assistants. "Maintenance team, Ma." The young woman replied quickly. "He's quiet, very hard-working. Hardly talks to anyone." Vanessa nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Keep an eye on him." The cleaner spent the morning tidying offices, dusting furniture, and sweeping the executive floor, but his mind wasn't on the mop. He was studying, observing. Every door, every face, every whispered conversation. He noticed it all. Around noon, a sudden argument broke out in the boardroom. The muffled voices grew louder. He froze by the hallway, pretending to clean as he listened. "We can't move the funds without authorization," one of the engineers protested. "And who's going to stop us?" Another replied, his voice thick with arrogance. "Vanessa said she'll handle the audit team herself. We just follow orders." The cleaner's brow tightened. He recognized those words. The same shortcuts, the same greed that once nearly destroyed his father's company decades ago. He continued sweeping, blending in like air, but his heart grew heavy with the weight of what he was uncovering. Later that afternoon, rain began to fall softly against the glass walls. Vanessa stood in her office, staring at the gray sky. The cleaner entered quietly to mop the floor. She spoke without looking at him. "Do you believe people change?" He paused. "Sometimes they do. Sometimes they just learn to hide who they are." She turned slightly, studying his reflection in the window. "That's a strange answer for a cleaner." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I've seen a lot in my life." Vanessa's lips curved in a small, guarded smile. What could a cleaner possibly have seen? He met her gaze directly, calm, deep, unflinching. Everything people think no one notices. The silence that followed was thick. The rain tapped gently on the windows. She looked away, feeling something stir inside her chest, something uncomfortable. For a moment, it felt like he could see straight through her, like he knew all the secrets she buried. Then her assistant entered, breaking the moment. "Ma, the investors from Singapore are waiting." Vanessa composed herself instantly, her tone snapping back to authority. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." The cleaner bowed slightly and stepped out. That evening, as the office emptied, he went to maintenance closet, pulled out a small old phone, and opened a hidden document he had kept for years. Proof of ownership, company plans, original signatures. Everything that once bore his name before she replaced it with hers. He looked at the paper and whispered softly, "Soon, the truth will breathe again." Meanwhile, in her private suite, Vanessa sat alone at her desk. The office lights dimmed, and the rain continued to fall. She picked up a framed photograph from her drawer, a picture from 10 years ago. A young man stood beside her, smiling. The same calm eyes, the same quiet strength. She traced his face with her fingers. "Why did you leave, Michael?" she whispered under her breath. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating her reflection, and if she had turned around at that moment, she would have seen the same man walking past her window, mop in hand, face unreadable, heart full of fire. The next morning began with a sharp wind that carried the smell of the Lagos lagoon into the city. Clouds rolled slowly over the skyline as dawn painted the sky in muted shades of gold and gray. Inside Novatech headquarters, the rhythm of the day began again. Hurried footsteps, clicking heels, ringing phones, and the distant hum of machines. But there was something different in the air. Something no one could quite name. The cleaner arrived earlier than usual, pushing his cart through the quiet corridors. His plain gray uniform clung to his tall frame, still damp from the morning drizzle. His hands, rough from years of work, gripped the mop handle firmly. Every move was calm, deliberate, like a man who had been preparing for this moment for years. Downstairs, the staff were whispering again. Rumors had begun to spread. Someone said the audit committee was investigating missing funds. Others whispered that Vanessa had enemies within her own board. Some even said the new cleaner wasn't what he seemed, that his eyes were too sharp, his silence too confident. In the executive lounge, Vanessa stood at the tall glass window, staring out at the city below. Her reflection stared back, elegant, commanding, but tired. Her dark brown skin glowed faintly under the sunlight. The power she wore so effortlessly suddenly felt heavy on her shoulders. Her assistant entered quietly. "Ma, the auditors are here. They say there's an issue with the research funds." Vanessa frowned. "Again? I already approved those reports." "They said there's a missing signature. They need you in the boardroom immediately." She sighed, straightened her blazer, and walked out. The cleaner was wiping the railings nearby. Their eyes met briefly, just for a second. It was enough to make her pause. "Good morning," she said softly. He nodded. "Morning, Ma." Something about his voice made her heart skip, slightly. There was warmth in it, something strangely familiar. But she shook it off and continued walking toward the boardroom. Inside, the tension was thick. The room was filled with men in suits, files stacked high on the table, the projector flashing charts and figures across the wall. The head auditor cleared his throat. "Madam Vanessa, our report indicates an unaccounted withdrawal of over 300 million naira from the Innovation Fund. The trail leads back to one of your senior engineers, but the authorization carries your signature." Her eyes widened. "That's impossible. I never signed off any withdrawal." He turned the document toward her. Her signature was there, bold, clean, perfect. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "This isn't mine." The board members exchanged worried glances. Whispers filled the room. "We have to suspend the engineer," one said. Another muttered, "Or maybe it was approved from the top." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "You think I would risk my career for theft? You know me better than that." The head of finance shook his head. "Madam, we've worked with you for years." "But the evidence." Her fingers clenched around the edge of the table. "Then someone forged my signature." The door opened softly. The cleaner stepped in, carrying a tray of tea. His quiet presence immediately drew eyes. He placed the tray carefully on the side table, bowed slightly, and began wiping the nearby shelves. The head auditor glanced at him briefly before turning back to the board. Whoever did this is skilled. The documents were buried deep. Only someone with intimate access could do it. The cleaner's movements slowed for a second. He looked up, his gaze flicking briefly toward one of the senior engineers, a tall man in his late 40s, sweating nervously, fingers tapping against the table. Then he looked back down and continued cleaning. Vanessa followed his gaze unknowingly. Her sharp instincts picked up the detail. She studied the nervous engineer quietly, her mind racing. The meeting dragged on for hours. Finally, the cleaner exited silently. But before leaving, he slipped a folded note beneath Vanessa's coffee cup. Later, when everyone had gone, she lifted the cup and found the note. It read, "Check the warehouse camera footage from 3 nights ago, midnight." Her heart pounded. She didn't recognize the handwriting, but something about it sent chills through her. She called her IT head immediately. "Give me the footage from the storage warehouse. 3 nights ago, midnight. Don't let anyone know." By evening, she sat alone in her office, watching the footage on her computer. The grainy black and white video showed the warehouse floor. Minutes passed, empty. Then a shadow moved. The tall engineer entered, looking around nervously. He opened a locker, took out a thick brown envelope, and signed into a restricted system using her credentials. Vanessa gasped, hand over her mouth. Oh my God! The truth hit her hard. Someone inside had set her up. She leaned back in her chair, her heart racing. And then, out of nowhere, she heard a quiet voice from the doorway. "You found it." She turned sharply. The cleaner stood there, calm as ever. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I didn't," he said softly. "I just follow what it makes sense." She stared at him, confused. "Who are you?" He hesitated, eyes lowering. "Someone who believes in giving people a second chance, even when they forget who they used to be." She studied his face, the strong jawline, the calm eyes, the quiet authority beneath the simplicity. Something about him felt hauntingly familiar. "Have we met before?" she asked slowly. He smiled faintly. "Perhaps, in another life." Before she could speak again, the office phone rang sharply. She turned to answer. "Yes." "Ma, there's a situation downstairs," her assistant said urgently. "The press is here. They've heard about the missing funds." Vanessa's stomach dropped. "What? Who told them?" "I don't know, Ma. They're saying the company might be under investigation." She slammed the phone down, anger and fear mixing in her chest. But when she looked back at the doorway, the cleaner was gone. Night fell quickly. The building emptied, but Vanessa stayed behind, pacing her office. The lights outside blinked softly across the city skyline. Somewhere below, in the quiet maintenance room, the cleaner stood alone, staring at an old photograph he kept in his wallet, a wedding photo from 10 years ago. The woman beside him was younger, smiling, radiant. "Vanessa," he traced her face gently with his thumb and whispered, "I didn't come back to destroy you. I came back to see if there was still anything left to save." The thunder rumbled outside. Upstairs, Vanessa stood by her window, staring into the rain, a feeling of unease creeping into her chest. For the first time in years, she felt the walls of her empire trembling not from scandal, but from the ghost of a man she once loved, the man she believed had left her forever. The next morning arrived with an uneasy silence over the entire Novatech tower. The usually vibrant offices were quieter than ever. Whispers traveled from cubicle to cubicle, tension filling the air like smoke before a storm. Everyone had heard the rumor. The CEO was being accused of embezzlement, and the board was preparing for an emergency meeting that could destroy her reputation forever. Vanessa sat alone in her office, her hands clasped tightly, staring at the file on her desk. Inside were the documents, the forged papers that had nearly ended her career, the same ones that carried her fake signature. She hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were swollen, and her perfectly braided hair now looked rough from the stress of pacing through the night. She stood up, suddenly and walked to the mirror. Her reflection looked back at her, the confident billionaire CEO who once controlled everything. Now, she saw someone afraid, wounded, but still burning with silent strength. "No," she whispered to herself. "I won't go down for something I didn't do." Outside, the boardroom filled with tension. Journalists were already waiting outside the building, cameras ready. The security guards, tall men in black uniforms, stood at the entrance, struggling to contain the chaos. Inside, the board member sat in silence as Vanessa walked in. Every eye followed her. Her sharp heels echoed across the marble floor. The chairperson, an elderly man with gray hair and light brown skin, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Vanessa, the board has reviewed the audit findings. The situation is severe. The media already knows, and the shareholders are panicking. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" She opened the folder and spread the forged documents on the table. These signatures were faked. The man behind it is sitting right here in this room. Gasps filled the boardroom. All eyes turned toward the senior engineer, the same man who'd been sweating nervously since the investigation began, his face drained of color. "Madam, you can't." "Silence." Vanessa's voice cracked like thunder. "You broke into my system, used my credentials, and framed me to hide your own theft. But you made a mistake. You forgot the cameras." She dropped printed stills from the warehouse footage on the table. The images showed him sneaking into the restricted section at midnight, signing into her system. The board erupted in murmurs. The engineer tried to speak again, but his voice was trembling. "It's not what it looks like." Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. "You betrayed this company. You betrayed me." Her voice was sharp, filled with pain more than anger. She turned to the others. "And for what? Money? You've all forgotten what we built this company for. Not greed, not fame, but innovation and people's lives." The chairperson raised a hand. "Mrs. Vanessa, this evidence is enough to clear your name. But how did you find this footage?" No one else had access. Before she could answer, the door opened quietly. The cleaner walked in. He was dressed the same as always, plain uniform, calm eyes, holding his cleaning cart. Yet something about his presence silenced the entire room. He set his mop aside and looked straight at Vanessa. She froze. The board members exchanged confused glances. "Who is this man?" one of them asked. He smiled faintly, his gaze locked on Vanessa. "Someone who once believed in this company, and in the woman who built it." Her breath caught. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear nothing else. Her lips parted, but no words came. "No, it can't be." He took a slow step forward. 10 years ago, before the world knew your name, before the awards, before the boardrooms, there was a man who helped you design your first prototype. The man who disappeared right before your first funding deal. Her voice trembled. "Michael," he nodded slightly. "It's been a long time." A stunned silence filled the room. The board members turned to each other in disbelief. The woman they knew as the untouchable billionaire, face to face with a man she once loved, now disguised as a cleaner. She took a shaky breath. "Why? Why would you come back like this?" He looked at her with steady eyes. "To see who you became when I was gone. To see if the woman I once loved was still somewhere beneath all the power and pride." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was sharp. "You could have told me who you were." "I wanted to," he said quietly. "But when I saw you again, you looked at me like I was invisible. I wanted to understand if your heart had changed, or just your world." The board sat frozen, unsure if they were witnessing a board meeting or a story straight from a film. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice softer now. "You let me believe you were dead." "I needed to leave," he said. "Back then, we were drowning in debt. I went abroad to seek help. But when I came back, you were already rising. I didn't want to ruin that. I thought maybe you were better off without me." Her tears finally fell. "You left me when I needed you most. I spent years hating you, crying, fighting alone." He looked down. "And I spent those years building what could fix the company I left behind and the woman I broke." From his pocket, he pulled out a small silver flash drive. He placed it gently on the table. Everything on this drive proves who really stole from Novatech. Not you, not me. The entire fraud was planned by your deputy and the board's accountant. They used my old contacts to fake the overseas transactions. The board erupted again in shock. The chairperson immediately ordered the IT head to plug it in. The screen flickered to life, revealing a series of transaction trails, voice recordings, and hidden emails. Undeniable evidence. Vanessa's trembling hand covered her mouth. You saved me. He smiled faintly. No, Vanessa, you saved yourself the moment you refused to give up. For the first time, she smiled, a real smile, not one for the cameras. The chairperson stood. Mrs. Vanessa, the board owes you an apology. And as for you, sir, whoever you are, this company owes you its gratitude. But the cleaner only bowed slightly. No need. I just did what I came back to do. As he turned to leave, Vanessa stepped forward and grabbed his hand. Please don't disappear again. He looked into her eyes, the same eyes he had once loved so deeply. If you'll still have me, I won't. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then the applause began, quiet at first, then rising like thunder. Outside, the sky over Lagos brightened, the sunlight breaking through the gray clouds. The chaos outside died down. The press didn't know yet that a story of redemption was unfolding inside those glass walls. The woman who was almost destroyed by lies had been vindicated, and the man she thought was lost had returned not to take from her, but to restore her. In the silence that followed, she whispered, 10 years apart, and still you came back when I needed you most. He smiled softly. The sun was high over Victoria Island, flooding the glass walls of Novatech headquarters with a golden glow. The company that had once stood on the brink of destruction now hummed with new life. Workers moved with purpose. The once fearful silence that had ruled the hallways was gone, replaced by calm hope and a quiet sense of pride. Inside the top-floor boardroom, the atmosphere was completely different from the weeks before. The air smelled of fresh flowers instead of tension. Laughter, genuine, soft laughter, occasionally broke the calm as staff prepared for a special event. The company's biggest press conference in years was about to begin. At the center of the long mahogany table sat Vanessa, no longer the broken CEO from before. She wore a simple, elegant white gown, nothing flashy, but radiating power through purity. Her deep brown skin glowed in the sunlight, her natural curls tied into a neat bun, her posture confident but peaceful. Every scar, every humiliation, had shaped the new woman the world was about to see. When the doors opened, the crowd went silent. Cameras flashed. Journalists stood, ready to capture every word. Vanessa walked to the podium slowly, each step echoing like the heartbeat of redemption. She took a deep breath before speaking. 10 years ago, she began softly, her voice steady, I built this company from an idea scribbled on a napkin, with someone who believed in me when I was nothing. We dreamed of changing Africa through innovation and hard work. She paused, her eyes glancing toward the back of the room where the cleaner, Michael, now stood, no longer in uniform but in a neat gray suit. He watched quietly, a small smile on his lips. When I lost him, she continued, I thought my world ended. I buried myself in work, in ambition, in power. I forgot why I started, and that forgetfulness almost destroyed everything we built. A murmur swept through the room. Her tone was calm but filled with truth. But life has a way of teaching us. Sometimes the person you overlook, the one who seems insignificant, is the one carrying your miracle. I thought I had everything. But in my lowest moment, the man I thought was gone forever came back as a simple cleaner and reminded me what truly matters. The cameras clicked again. A journalist lowered his pen and just listened. We've learned that success without compassion is emptiness. Power without humility is poison, and money without purpose will destroy even the strongest. She turned and motioned to Michael. Slowly, he stepped forward and stood beside her. His tall frame, warm dark brown skin, and humble posture contrasted sharply with her elegance. Yet together, they radiated something no luxury could buy. Unity. She smiled softly. This man taught me that greatness isn't proven by titles or wealth, but by the courage to do what others can't, even when no one believes in you. Applause filled the hall. Vanessa turned to the audience again. From today, Novatech will launch a new foundation, the Hands at Build. It will fund scholarships for low-income students who dream of becoming engineers, and create job programs for those who were forgotten, just like the man who once cleaned our floors, yet fixed what our richest minds could not. The room erupted into standing ovation. Even the board members who once doubted her were clapping, some with tears in their eyes. Michael glanced at her, pride shining in his gaze. He leaned slightly and whispered, "You did it." She turned to him, smiling gently. "We did it." Outside, the city roared to life. Traffic, honking, laughter, the sound of Legos in its full rhythm. Yet inside that hall, something deeper was happening. Healing, restoration, destiny fulfilled. After the press conference, as the crowd began to disperse, Vanessa stepped out onto the terrace overlooking the skyline. The ocean breeze brushed her face. Michael joined her silently. For a moment, neither spoke. The world below looked peaceful, small, as if everything had finally found its place. She looked at him quietly. "Do you ever regret disappearing?" He smiled faintly. "I regret the pain it caused, but not the lesson it gave. Sometimes distance is the only thing that teaches value. I came back not to test you, but to see if time had changed what truly mattered." She nodded slowly. "It did. It changed me. And for the first time in years, I feel free." They stood there in silence, the sunset painting the glass walls gold. It wasn't a reunion of two lovers chasing lost time. It was a meeting of two souls who had grown, healed, and found each other again through purpose. Finally, Michael spoke again. "You know, the truth is, wealth doesn't define us. Love does. Humility does. The will to forgive does. That's what keeps us human." Vanessa smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. And maybe that's what God wanted all along, not to break us, but to rebuild us into something better. He took her hand gently. Together, they looked out at the skyline, the city bathed in light, the company reborn and their story complete. As the camera slowly panned away from them, the golden rays of dusk settled on the tall tower behind them, the same tower that once symbolized pride, now standing as a monument to grace. Moral lesson: never look down on anyone. Even the simplest person might hold the key to your destiny. True success isn't found in power or wealth, but in humility, compassion, and forgiveness. Life's hardest moments are often disguised blessings, shaping us into who we are meant to be. Destiny delayed is not destiny denied. It only waits for the right time to shine.